The movie opens with a group of pirates resting in a dense forest on Una Una Island, Indonesia, probably after the completion of a raid. As one of them wanders into the woods to relieve himself, he comes across a helmet. Following the discovery, he stumbles onto a dark and ominous cave. Interest piqued, he goes inside to investigate. Obviously, something bad happens. He gets dragged into a hole with no trace afterwards. The scene shifts to a group of people in search of something in the mines. The group consists of a tycoon, his girlfriend, a Japanese scientist, a former military engineer, and a bunch of mercenaries. One of the lower-ranked soldiers inspects a Japanese machine gun nest that dates back to the Second World War. While the henchman is inside the gun nest, the sergeant, along with the others, is outside. The tycoon who sponsored the project, Price, and his girlfriend look like they are on a vacation instead of a dangerous expedition. As they hear a scream from inside the mines, the soldiers quickly put themselves in defense mode. It turns out to be a false alarm, though. The henchman was just playing a prank with the skull he had found in the trench. Annoyed, Price rudely asks the sergeant, Tino, to keep his men on a tighter leash. Tino, almost in a stern tone, asks the sergeant to quit it with his pranks. Price and the scientist, Rai, go inside the bunker to examine the gun nest. While they are probing around, the other soldiers joke around with the skull. As the others wait for Price, Stanley, the engineer, asks Tino if he knows what Price is searching for, but Tino says that he has no information and does not intend to find out. The engineer, who seems to be the sole bearer of practicality in the group, comments that he always likes to be informed about the basics and the pay while accepting a job. Stanley also shares that he feels like something is following them around, probably due to the excessive pirate activities around the place. The group continues to hike into the forest, going deeper until they reach an inactive, dead mine. The engineer informs them that it was a Dutch mine from the colonial period that was abandoned when the Japanese occupied the country in 1942. Price adds that it was then repurposed to use as a military bunker. Stanley asks Price if this is what they are looking for, and the tycoon confirms. The engineer announces that he needs to check the bunker to see if it is safe to go inside. There have apparently been signs of recent seismic activity, which might imply that the whole place could be unstable. He promises to be done within a couple hours. As he proceeds with his job, he asks Rai how she had come to work with Price. The scientist admits that she had come for her own research, which is focused on the Second World War and the nature and psychology of the soldiers that allowed them to do their heinous deeds. Stanley states that it is easy to determine how the soldiers think. He explains that to get a soldier, one needs to take a human being and re-engineer them. You have to break them down to the very essence of their individual existence and then build them back up again, altering something at the core of them. It can be duty or obedience, anything really that tells them that it is their purpose to kill a man. He concludes that soldiers are basically weapons. Rai asks if he has a weapon, to which Stanley replies he had once upon a time. Suddenly, the group is under fire from a group of pirates. Finding no other place to take cover, they resort to running inside the dead mine, despite the engineer not having finished the examination. The soldier that runs in last fails to notice the grenade thrown after him. The place explodes into flames. When the group regains consciousness after the explosion, they are met with a horrific sight. The unfortunate henchman is stuck under the collapsed rubble. Also, the entrance of the mine is blocked. They struggle to get the soldier out of the debris as he screams out in pain. One of his legs is severely injured. As the radio communication is cut off, Stanley cautions Tino that since the entrance is blocked, they will have to search for a different way to escape the mine. He suggests that they can delve deeper, but warns there is no absolute guarantee that they would find another way out. An argument arises in the group as the engineer questions Price about the attack of the pirates, asking if it really was a coincidence. Price denies the claim that the pirate attack might be because of him, as he is adamant that nobody knows about whatever he is looking for. The engineer presses on for more details about their mission. The frustrated tycoon finally reveals that with the help of Rai, that have directed them to this particular location. He is, in fact, in search of the Japanese military commander's treasure. Stanley loses his calm, refusing to believe its existence. Price explains that the treasure might not be in the Philippines, but that they can still discover something in the mine. Before their argument can take a physical turn, Tino intervenes and asks them to focus on more pressing issues, like finding a way out. The group agrees and makes their way deeper into the mine. As they are crossing a bridge, the lights surrounding them suddenly turn on, and a war propaganda song pierces the intense silence. Everybody looks around in confusion, questioning the strange experience, as they had assumed that the mine was an empty, abandoned one. Price suggests that the explosion probably triggered a power generator. Tino mocks the theory, but Price points out that there is no way that someone besides could be inside the mine, as the entrance looked untouched. The engineer looks at the situation differently, as this might indicate that there might be a way to exit the mine after all. As they venture further into the mine, the group comes across uncountable bottles, hazardous materials suits, and some really disturbing photographs of subjects under experimentation. They find a room that Tino believes to be the communication center. Rai also finds maps pinned on the walls. As they are busy checking the room, a ghastly figure is seen behind one of the soldiers. Nobody seems to notice his presence, except the sergeant. By the time he turns around and points his gun at the intruder, though, the figure is gone. Rai explains that the map she was inspecting depicts the mine and that the markers refer to the 25th Area Army. This makes Price believe that this is one of the Japanese commander's hideouts. Stanley accuses Price of keeping some information away from the group, as the mine does not feel like a standard bunker or a bank vault. He also questions the photos they had found earlier. In spite of Price's protests, Rai reveals that they discovered that the mines were operating centers for Unit 731, a secret medical research unit which specialized in the development of biological and chemical warfare through the means of lethal human experimentation. This angers Tino, who asks why they haven't told him that. Price's girlfriend, Su Ling, states arrogantly that it does not matter, as they were soldiers being paid to do their job. An argument breaks out once again, everyone hurling accusations at everyone else. One of the soldiers asks about the need for gold by the experimenters. Rai fails to give an answer as the records were incomplete, to which the soldier guesses that if the gold actually exists, then the story of Unit 731 might be a fabricated one to keep people away. As they delve deeper, they stumble upon a bunker where Tino decides on splitting up so that the injured soldier can rest a bit. Wrong move, as usual. Price and Su Ling insist on tagging along with Tino and the sergeant to search for an alternate way out while also keeping an eye out for the commander's treasure. Rai, Stanley, and another soldier stay behind to look after the injured man, Ario. Rai asks Stanley his reason for quitting the army. He recounts an incident in Afghanistan where, while having a night out, he got involved into a petty argument with a guy who bumped into him and did not apologize. He ended up smashing a bottle on the man's head, nearly killing him. It left Stanley afraid of himself for liking the feeling of bloodshed and homicide. In another part of the mine, Tino and the others reach a room full of cages. Price discovers a helmet that belonged to the Australian prisoners of war. Tino asks if they were the victims of the lethal experiments of the Japanese military, but Price denies possessing any relevant information. Stanley asks Rai if Unit 731 is the main reason for her to join the Tycoon, and she confirms it. While resting, the Ario suddenly senses a presence underneath him. Just as he gets up to see, a pair of hands grabs him and pulls him into a hole. The other three catch a glimpse of a mutant who runs away. Stanley asks Rai what the mutant is, but the scientist denies having any knowledge about it. They jump into the hole shortly after in search of Ario. Under the bunker, Stanley and Rai discover the injured soldier's body. His throat has been slit. Stanley consoles Rai, as she is clearly distraught at the scene, and asks her to keep moving since it is dangerous to stay there. They are so distracted that they do not notice the man in a gas mask until it is too late. He knocks out the engineer as Rai lets out a panicked scream. The other group, in the meantime, comes across a room where they discover notes and formulas for the medical experiments. The door is seen to gently close behind them. Joko, the other soldier who had jumped in after Ario, is grabbed by one of the mutants and thrown into a cavern filled with corpses and human remains. While looking around the cave, he finds the body of the pirate from the opening scene. Suddenly, He is attacked by several mutants, coming from different directions. Although he manages to put up a daunting fight, one of the mutants blinds him. Gripping his gun tightly, he tries to use his hearing to continue fighting, but realizes there are too many around him. He lets go of his gun and looks up, resigning to his fate as the mutants attack him. Hearing Joko's faraway screams, the other group becomes alert. They realize that they have been locked inside. While the soldiers are trying to look for a way to get out of the room, Price gets attacked by a mutant that had managed to climb from underneath the floor. It stabs him on his left shoulder with a bone. Tino briskly shoots the mutant, but it seems to be immune to bullets. Enraged, the mutant then attacks Tino instead, tackling him to the ground and violently punching him. It is only stopped when one of the henchmen grabs a broken metal shelf and stabs the mutant with it, succeeding to kill it. Stanley wakes up with the war propaganda playing in the background. He finds the man wearing a gas mask hovering over him with a sword. He tells Rai in Japanese, which she then translates to Stanley, that they are now prisoners of the Japanese Imperial Army. She tells him that the man thinks that they are allied enemies. She insists that the war is over, but naturally, the man does not buy it. Stanley, at that moment, attacks the man and manages to remove his mask, revealing a face that looks disturbingly old. Rai does not give up and makes an effort to explain to the man again that the war is indeed over, showing footages from the archive on her tablet. These footages make the man lose control. He falls to his knees in front of a body covered in the Japanese flag. Then, the Gask Man narrates his story to Rai and Stanley. He was one of the 2 soldiers employed to guard the mine during the war. But when the Japanese army surrendered and left in 1945, they were sealed inside. His companion showed desire to surrender, which resulted in the execution in the hands of the masked man. Rai and Stanley also learn that the mutants are in fact former prisoners of war. Japanese military conducted the experiments by gassing them, which led to their transformation. Later, they had discovered a new procedure which was used on their own soldiers. The masked man and his partner were also injected with a chemical that kept them young and fierce, but it was a failed experiment. Stanley assumes that the gas mask man is the last of his kind, but is quickly proven wrong. The man says that the experimentation led to the perfection of the formula, which was given to the best soldiers, the Imperial Guards. Meanwhile, Tino finds a tattoo on the mutant's head, written in Japanese. Price translated it to Australian, 24 years, further affirming that the mutants were indeed prisoners of war. He also speculates that this might be the experiments of Unit 731. Giving up on opening the door they came from, they enter another room where they notice a corpse, mid-experiment, with stitches across the body and skull wide opened. Price comes across a syringe filled with a foreign chemical with specks of gold, which were the substances used for conducting the experiments. He becomes frustrated when he realizes that his journey might be futile if this is the last of the commander's treasures. Su Ling asks Price why the chemical was mixed with gold, to which he replies that gold is believed to be the ancient elixir of life and the basis of alchemy. Su Ling figures that if the concoction inside the syringe can transform the soldiers into those mutants, then it would be of more worth than the commander's treasure. Price tells his girlfriend to keep the syringe safe for him. Tino and his henchmen manage to pry open the door on the other side of the room, only to be met with hundreds of figures in samurai suits, seemingly in slumber. The perfect mutant soldiers, the Imperial Guard. The soldiers wake up and charge towards them, unbothered by Tino's and others' attempts to stop them. Tino commands Price and Su Ling to move towards a grate, leading them to a drainage system. The henchman stays behind to give them a chance to escape, but is unfortunately killed. The group reaches the cavern where Tino discovers Joko's corpse. The injured Tino is attacked by the other mutant in the cavern, and after a strenuous altercation, manages to kill it with a bone. The group finally rejoins with Stanley and Rai. While Tino and Stanley discuss if the gas-masked man is trustworthy or not, Su Ling stabs Price with the syringe carrying the experimental concoction in an attempt to save him. Just then, the Imperial Guards catch up to them. Everyone rushes to escape, but the masked man stays behind and offers his life for failing the Japanese military. The failed mutant is seen to be kneeling in front of the guards, probably promising allegiance. As the group is chased by the guards, they struggle to open a door. While the others are fighting off mutants, Su Ling manages to open the door and sneak Price in before locking out the rest of the group. She finds a tunnel that the mutants use to enter and exit the mine, but sadly fails to escape. The effects of the formula have transformed Price into an insane, unempathetic mutant who smashes her head against a wall. The other group is still inside the mine, chased by the Imperial guards. They enter a door and discover a drainage system. Here again, Tino stays behind to hold off the guards to help the escape of Ryan Stanley. He attempts to put up a fight, but is immediately killed. The final two end up in water now, and Rye finds a grate that leads outside. Before Stanley can reach the grate, an Imperial guard jumps into the water right next to him. Rye is the only person that succeeds in escaping the dead mine and finds herself in the middle of a lake. She swims towards the shore. Disastrously, an Imperial guard emerges from the water, moving towards the unfortunate scientist. Rye tries to fight him one last time. As he lifts her by the throat, she notices more guards emerging from the lake. The movie ends with the Imperial guard swinging his katana as Rye lets out a feral scream.